Hello.
Hello.
I have a
Yes.
mock-up to show.
Okay, cool.
I have to probably change the resolution of my screen. Let me export this as a video as well so I can send it to everybody.
Good morning.
Morning, Peter. So we're waiting for Raphael to present something to us.
But Adam has to be here.
Yeah, don't know where. Let's see if he's
And Mark.
Well, I have the skeleton of my visualization working. It won't be fully functional until early to mid next week.
Okay, well,
But I can probably show you the general rough, loose look and feel.
I would prefer we don't, because today we need to do the ACM work for what's going to be given in to the ACM people. So I'm hoping that Adam will be here and Mark as well, because we only have 2 days to finish the work. So let me just text Mark. A bit odd. Let's see here now.
Mock-up.
But on the bright side, I have most of the functions for data manipulation, the plumbing already working. So I'm starting to wire it up to the visuals.
That sounds good. That sounds good. Well, while we're waiting, Peter, if you do have something to share, or you, Raphael, maybe you start, Peter.
Okay, hang on a second. Let me get on the screen and show. Okay, finding the graphic first.
See design mock-up.
Okay, move that onto clean desktop. Okay, now how do I share screen on this? 1 second. Zoom. Meeting. Let's see, how do I start screen sharing? Oh, I see it now. Share screen, got it. Okay. Okay, can you see us?
Can do, yep.
Yep.
Okay, so we have a selector up at the top for all the different views I'm putting in. Starting off with raw data. So if you want to be able to have a look at the underlying CVS files content, you can. That's the nodes file there. We have the edges file. Then we're starting to pick apart lists, all the conference years, conference abbreviations, full conference names. And I'll have these wired up so that when you make a selection, it will act as a filter.
Nice.
Yeah, very good.
Okay, collaborations. So we have all of the combinations, unique combinations of authors together, sorted by first author's name. So you can, for instance, if you're going to see who Carol Goebel had worked with, you can scroll down to the C's. And then right in here, you see Joe Bullock, Robert Stevens, Simon Harper. And there's Robert Stevens, Simon Harper again, and Yasuo Yasada. And once again, once you click any of these, they'll show up in the selections pane. So let's say you picked conference year 1987. Then eventually that'll pop up here as an actual selection. Let's see. Most recently selected. Yeah, that's not connected yet. Here we are, items of interest. So the items of interest will represent a set so that you can have more than 1 year selected to build up more complex filters. And then most recently selected will just be the last thing you selected. And that'll even be able to pick up text highlighted inside of the document anywhere. Say you're reading an abstract, you'll be able to select a piece of that and then pull that text. Okay, going back to the list, collaborations, keywords, papers, article type. Then we have views. And here's our paper view. So I'm starting off with a little slug representation of each paper. As you mouse over, this is the next thing I'm going to wire in. We'll provide all the information about the paper, papers it cites, and papers that were cited with in the main center pane while you're scrolling up and down here. Slug length is tied to number of words in the paper title. So you get a sense of short titled papers versus long titled ones, and just a visual sense of being able to jump back to where you were. But when you select one of these boxes, you'll get all the full elaborate information on it, including what it cited and what it cited. And hopefully by early next week, I'll have that functioning.
Peter, I think if we combine your system with my visuals, I think we have a product.
More than happy to.
Well,
Sounds good.
Sure. Let me share.
Okay, let me stop sharing. Hang on.
Just to say, I think in the current nodes that I push, there is also article type in there that tells you basically it's a long paper, which is 10 pages, a short paper, which is sort of between 4 and 7, demo, poster, keynote, that kind of thing. It all gets sketchy. And I am wondering if this is the point where, because when I started for Adam's first thing, I just used the papers in that actually were cited or cited something else. But now these things have matured a bit. I'm tempted to put the whole lot back in, which makes it, instead of 850, it's about 1,400 papers. But that's another aspect, which was prompted by Fred asking me, so he was looking for a paper he did. I said, well, it's not there because it hasn't cited anything. And it's very recent, so it can't, well, it's last year, so it can't have been cited, and it didn't happen to cite another paper. But originally my intent is they'll all be in there because I'm never quite kowtowed at the altar of citation, in the sense that just because other people thought it was good, it's sort of Stalin's theory of art. I still like to know for myself whether it's as good as it's supposed to be. Just picking the things that other people said is okay tells you what the status quo is. It doesn't tell you whether you believe in the status quo.
So how do you like the idea of having the slugs initially as opposed to a microscopic version of the print of the full title?
Okay, let's guys, let's look at Raphael's presentation, because we have to send an example of 3 papers, visual meta, to ACM. And
okay, yeah,
I'm happy to do that myself, but if you guys want to be part of the polishing, we need to do that together. Okay.
Okay.
So clearly we've learned that Raphael has a massive monitor.
Yes, so it's an ultra wide monitor. It's good for the things that I have to do. I hope you guys can see it clearly. Since it's mostly animation, you shouldn't be too worried about the text. This is what I managed to do this morning. Basically, I took what Adam had as a visual, and I tried to do a little mock-up to see how that would interact with the content. So here on the left side, you can see a little wheel cog. That's for the menu, the settings, or the options, whatever you want to call it. And then if you click there, then the options opens up, and then you have all of the little options here on the side. And then if you click on one of the toggles, for example, paper highlighting, then the highlights come up. Then you can see all the pretty highlights. And then after you close the options menu, let's say, for example, I have the visual representation of knowledge structure selected. So that's in yellow for being selected. And then the way I thought about it is that it's a 2-click structure. So if you click it once, the highlights show up. If you click it again, then the abstract opens up. So then once you click it again, everything goes up to the sides. The abstract goes into the middle.
So you
And
made
then
a
the
hybrid
papers-
between the two views in a sense.
Yes. So then the papers it is citing and cited by are also shown here in the middle because they might be very apart from each other. If you have one paper that is, being cited, 1980 and another
Hang on, I
2010.
just want to, I see Jacob has just joined us. Jacob, I just want to say Raphael is showing, can you go back a few screens, please?
Sure, I can go back to the beginning.
So what's happened here, Jacob, is that Mark Anderson here has made a massive database of all the hypertext papers ever. And the way it relates to what we do with Visual Meta is that a Visual Meta proper document can just go into this. So Adam, who is not here, he's in Sweden with family issues, it's holiday there, may or may not join us, but he's made something that works that's similar to this. So Raphael is now showing a polish. So yeah, please continue, Raphael.
Yeah, so then I took Adam's work and then I created a little options menu on the left side. And then once you click paper highlighting, the papers, highlight. And then once you click again on one of the papers or the presentations, then it opens up for you to see the content. And then the citing and cited by are also shown here in the middle because they might be very apart from each other. And then the way it works, if you click in any of the citing or cited by, then it takes you to that paper. So that becomes the main paper that is on screen. And then if you click, the search box and you type something in, let's say you type in transclusion and then you press enter, and then it filters for all of the keywords that have transclusion shown. And then I think this would be where Peter's system would come in. We would just upgrade this search functionality to have a bunch of different search possibilities by year, by person, by keyword, by paper, by term, by anything. And then once you click any of these, it would basically just go back to this view where you can navigate and see the cited and cited by.
Why do you have instead of this box opening up in the 1989 column, why did you make it to the right? And why is there a citing in light blue inline there rather than point to it on the left?
Because they might be apart. I don't know. Okay.
No, that's fine. I think that's an interesting approach for sure.
Can I ask, Raphael, is on your screen, are there other columns to left and right of this? Does it stretch out to the right? And there's no hidden question. It's simply because I'm on a small screen than you are. Yeah.
This mock-up is a 1920 by 1080. So this is a regular full HD monitor. And then another view that I didn't have time to mock up would be kind of a quick scroll view between the years. And then we could quickly jump between the years. And then this is like an infinite horizontal canvas with all of the years.
So on the new iPhone 13-inch.
No, I mean, you could just scroll left and right, or that sort of sounded harsh in a way I didn't mean. No, because this is it's a very genuine, interesting challenge. Because once you get to sort of a data set potentially this rich, that actually it is sort of quite difficult to do. And I'm see it in reverse when I've been just again when I had to correct some of the data set. If I go to the DLACM, I can only read one stub article at a time, because if I move the screen up, a drop down falls down, which I didn't ask for. If I go to the bottom, it gives me a pop-up asking for recommended system I didn't ask for, and which is, I think, designed for mobile use, but actually is completely and utterly useless in any other thing for a researcher. The way we solve that, Mark, usually the way we solve it is with something called easy loading. So it only loads what's on screen. So it doesn't take any memory, anything whatsoever. As soon as you click on something, then it loads. But even the content on the left and the right, they're only loading if they're close to the main area of the screen.
And I get that, because I remember trying to do it before people had figured it out. Peter's got his hand up.
Okay, I think we need to hold on the visualization because we still have time for that. And today we need to look at what to do with these 3 documents. You've all got them in email, right?
Yeah, Fred, you just quickly want to check Peter's point before we slide by. He's got his hand up.
Okay, yeah, Peter?
Oh, I was
Is it
just
about the
wondering,
visual- Yeah,
I was just
sorry.
wondering, Mark, do you have any stubs for things that are outside of the ACM conference series, like citations as we may think?
No, at the moment, that's 26K of really messy data that will need human curation to be useful, is my answer. So theoretically, yes. Also theoretically, where people worked and stuff. One of the things I want to do, try to be quick, is that I think I want to suggest the hypertext community. This is the thing the community should crowdsource for itself. It's fixable, it's doable. It just requires a number of people to give time. If people are sufficient, people who are used to working and spotting error. It's quite niche skill. It's working over a lot of data, dealing with basically poor, subpar early OCR, sorting it out, putting in the data set. Once it's in the data set, we can do what we like with it. But at the moment, no, because it's only me and I run out of time.
Okay.
Okay,
So-
thanks.
So what we need to do today is to figure out how to solve a few issues with the visual meta. The first thing is, now that Jacob is here, I think he suggested the same thing. Jacob and everyone, you can see my screen, right? If not, please do tell.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do, I'm being a bit hardcore, much more than normal. I hope you'd like to, I hope you would agree. And what we do today, because today and Monday is the only time we have to send this off. So the structure visual meta, we all know what it is. So if we look at the plain one, and Jacob, this is what we worked on last week, and I think this is exactly what you also came up with, and that is in the visual meta, we have BibTeX as it's given to us by ACM. We do nothing other than make sure it's, there's nothing funny. That's the easy bit. So if all we do that, we have visual meta on these documents and it's a win. But then we all know the huge issues with author names. So our solution was, and this is based on years and years of you, Jacob, telling me put things in little tic tacs, little, compartments or whatever. So that's what I've tried to do here. Is this an approach that everybody in principle agrees with, or is there something with the way that this is written that we need to change? Oh, Jacob has unmuted. Let's see what's coming. I'm giving you such a hard time, Jacob, because you're the one who's lived and breathed actually implementing this stuff. So
there's nothing wrong with how that is. I don't know if it should be in the form of author one, or because then I assume that means there would also be potentially could be an author two, author three.
Yes.
How about ACM user account name if they have one?
That's all fine.
Pull up their author record in the ACM.
All that can be fine. That can go here. That's another field.
So Jacob, you're right. So basically, the idea is to have a bit more refined information on each author, and arguably it could go down to the affiliation of institution. One of the unknowns here is what people want out of it. What's been quite interesting is, whereas in the future text community, we've had a quite interesting conversation about you can find. I found that people who are in sort of mainstream academia is more a combination of they either want to do ego surfing, where are all my papers, or they want to know who basically what their competitors are, or which universities have providing more papers and getting more money. It's a very sterile view, but you could say it's useful. So knowing what the entities are, so it's not just the people. So the idea of splitting out the authors was that, well, if it's just given as a list, even if we can parse out all the authors to put them on a screen, or to do something, that may not be enough. If we perhaps have a richer data set around it, because I think what came out from Adam's demos, which I think you've seen, is just the ability to, it's just looking for patterns and associations we didn't know before. So the metadata is the metadata that was always arguably there if you bothered to collect it. What we're trying, part of what we're doing, on top of all the clever, or the deep thinking that went into what you and Fred have done with author and reader, is to start to unpack, well, okay, how can we not only now have a sort of clean container for metadata, but how can we do it in a way that enables us to reuse it and actually move it out of the print age and into the digital age, if that helps.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I was thinking for things like any collection of data in here, I know I sent it to Frode, a mock-up kind of instead of where it would be author 1, add author 1, add author 2, add author, whatever, it would be more of it would be authors, and then it would have some data about it.
Oh, here you go.
Yeah, so it would list maybe that it's a type collection, and then there would be some way. I just use dashes to separate the entities. I hadn't really come up with a really good way of doing that yet. And then it could potentially have more info, like the message above it has the type that says it's a collection, and then what we kind of expect to be in there. So the name and a level. That was kind of my replacement for the ugly, not human friendly JSON that we started with.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, one of the things I think we've all tried to do here is to sort of hold in very gently, in a way that doesn't crush anything, this emergent idea, in the sense that, well, whether it's in format A or format B is too early to decide. The question is, what are we trying to structure here? So, for instance, it might come down to, well, if we take the view that BibTeX can't have nested objects, for sake of argument, well, it might have to be done differently. But I totally take your idea. I really like that, because this is
that's really important.
Well, okay, but sorry, it's using BibTeX syntax is probably what I should have said.
The point of that is so that I can use the exact same parsing code.
Yeah.
To get the name and the level like that.
But the neat thing about what you're suggesting is just that it means that it's this point of it being self-descriptive. So I really like that, and that's something we'd overlooked, and so that's nice that you picked that up, because it just means, and this reinforces to me the idea of when someone says, well, why not just make linked data? I'm thinking, no, because humans can't read that. The machines can, I know, but part of this is we're trying to not just depend on a machine we haven't designed yet to be able to understand this and move it forward. So that's a really nice idea.
Yeah, I mean, Jacob, the reason it's really important that Jacob is part of designing this is it's his software that will produce this, at least in our case, and it's his software that will read it. And in doing the work with Mark and Adam's visualizations, further issues of, oh, what about this has come up, primarily with how to encode names. So that's why just doing something like this, where we literally say this bit is the first name, last name, and Peter just now mentioned ACM user ID, fine. Literally just put it in there. And when you then do a visualization or analysis, you can choose which of these variables are useful. You may only use the ORCID ID. You may use something else for something else. I just think that we have a golden chance to nail down a naming system now for a long time.
But the point being that I think within that thing, probably the thing that we need to nail down is that what is the sort of minimum viable number of contents for that, and what are the other descriptive things?
Yes, that's exactly
and in the And the interesting thing of what I really like about Jacob's point is that the wrapper about the author could be one good place where it say this is, so probably most people may know, BibTeX type of sort of fields, but if you're saying so what on earth is an ACM ID? Well, that just might be a link, effectively dereferenceable, explaining if you didn't know what an ACM ID was, what it is.
Yeah.
And that's a very nice bridge again between the human and the sort of the linked information world. So I like that.
Yeah. So when we look at the actual document, let's start with this one. There's 3 of them, but we have to support. It has the name, which is all we've been discussing now, really.
Mhm.
And then there's email address, location, department, and university. We don't actually have that. So if we go with this style of doing it, should we just say what that is?
Well, I have 2 suggestions, and Jacob I'm going to put this up so Jacob can now tear it down for misassumptions. But it might make sense to, and just making a note that Peter's got his hand up as well, that that the organizations are similarly split out, because if 3 people belong to the same organization, we don't really want to.
This is per person. Remember?
Yeah. No, right. What I'm saying is that if there are 5 authors and between them they belong to 2 organizations, we don't have to write the same information 5 times. You write it twice, and 3 of them say I belong to information 1, and 2 of them say I belong to organization 2.
I personally think that's too connected.
Okay, well that's fine, but anyway, I put it out there.
No.
I was going to suggest the same thing of like an organization section and then an identifier link or something.
But sorry, I see your hand up, Peter, but I'm thinking there are some scientific papers where there's like 20 authors. So is that the kind of situation you're thinking this would be useful to have, to do that kind of grouping, Mark?
Yeah, but well, yes, because I don't think I've seen a paper with 20 authors where they all came from different places. Normally, they tend to come from a number. I mean, I don't care to put the point is they come from less than the number of authors.
Right. So,
and bear in mind that even if we're printing it in one point or whatever, at the end of the day, it's all digital trees. So plus the fact this goes back to the point that I know has been kicked around in Adam's demos, and is this fact of, well, how you know that Sophra Kitramili is the same as Sophia N Kitramili, and so the fact that we're pulling out the organizations, it's exactly the same problem of trying to cut down on the number of conflicting entities, because when we want to do all the cleverness based upon this, in terms of doing some visualization, as we started with, that sort of matters, that we know that, Sophia, it turns up saying all 3 papers under a different name.
Yeah, but
it's messy. It shouldn't happen, but it does. Well, we're humans. We don't think about these things.
Well, we do think about it. That's what we've been doing for the last month. That's where we.
Oh, well, no, we do. I'm saying we generally, as humans.
That's why we have the ORCID ID, the ACM user ID, the email. We have as many different things. One thing that we have discussed, Jacob, in the community is that names change and affiliations change. So the whole idea is just for this bit to provide as many pieces of information so that in the future you can see, okay, well, they changed this, but chances are it's the same person because all these other things match. Yeah, sorry, Peter.
Okay, I think the only thing I do is on the email, I think it needs to have the date that this information was current attached to it. Now, since the email format
generally the date of publication of the document, Peter.
Yeah, but I think it should be attached in the metadata itself, because it's not necessarily going to stay living in that document. Somebody might suck in all the metadata of all the visual meta from 5 papers, and
then it's for them to do at that point. I'm not trying to be annoying, but we are doing this as one thing. If someone wants to do something clever like that, then they have the responsibility of also extracting year equals 2020, don't you think?
Well, even that isn't necessarily going to be accurate, because by the time publication has come around of the 2020 paper, you might have left your affiliation with Uni A and moved to Uni B, so it will no longer be your correct email address.
But
at
Peter,
that time.
that is not something that the publisher will know. Okay.
Right, but I'm just saying that if that little tiny chunk of metadata on the email had current at, just like a circa, maybe just like after their name, and that's one nice thing about the email format, is that generally you'll have like the human readable name followed in angle brackets by the actual mail to email address. If on the human readable name, you just put in parens the date that was current, so it'll be living in the email metadata there to be picked up later on compared to other dates for the thing. So then we could like automatically resolve changes in email addresses a little bit more cleanly.
I don't agree with you, Peter, because we can only deal with the information that the publisher has at hand. And this email address may first of all be wrong. And secondly, when it changes, the publisher won't be updated about that. So all we can do here is honestly publish what we know at the time of publication. And I think that your logic is sound, of course it is. I think that basically all other fields in this could also then have that name. They could change their post. They could change postfix. They could change part of their name at a certain date, right? They could change their department. All of this could change. So why do we have to put a date there when we have it here? Yeah, Mark.
I was going to say, I understand. I understand and feel the pain of where Peter is coming from, having gone through these hoops. And I think the way to tie it together pragmatically is that to cut down on the amount we save, this is probably something to push up into the metadata, for instance, that Jacob has suggested we provide about the authors, in terms of telling people or parsers, whatever, that, right, the following, the implication you can take is if you're looking at the email, it was understood to be correct at some other bit of metadata that we're providing in this set. And if we're not providing that date, then we say it. And that's probably as much as pragmatically it's sensible to do, because, you know, to a certain extent we could put everything on board as cargo, but I'm conscious that the potential is we end up with almost more metadata than paper if we're not careful.
Okay, I have a quick fix idea. How about if we just add on the authors a verified field, and that can be the date when the author is actually writing and providing that, because by the time something gets through the publication chain, it might no longer be current. And that way we know that the metadata was created on that date, which isn't necessarily going to be the date of final publication.
I'm not going to ask ACM to do that. They would have to provide that. We're already walking on a really razor edge of even being allowed to be included. If we ask them to give more information about when an author sent them an email or something, I don't think we have any chance of this happening. So I think,
yeah, I accept that fact, Fred. I mean,
okay.
So I think it says that my heart agrees with Peter. My pragmatism probably agrees with your last point.
I'm not talking about which organs of yours I want you to agree with me, Mark, but okay, fair enough. So while we're talking about this, Jacob, one thing you mentioned a while ago is maybe we should not be using JSON for headings and paratext and so on. Do you still want to change that? And if so, to what? Or should we stick with this? I don't see a problem with it, but if you have a problem, that's obviously an issue.
Yeah, I want to switch away from JSON. That's what we were just discussing earlier with the collections and having like that format. With plain bib text, if parsing fails, I can, for the most part, I can quickly look at it and visually see what broke the parser. How many times did parsing the JSON for the book fail?
Yeah.
Just because there was some nightmare little string somewhere that
And you were the one who had to deal with it.
it was just a pain. Expecting anybody to do the JSON parsing manually or producing the JSON manually if needed is unacceptable.
So what I have to ask you then, Jacob, since you're proposing this change at this stage, and unfortunately we haven't had meetings scheduled lately, so that's just our thing. But will you have time to work on this today and or Monday and or this weekend? And before you answer yes or no, what I mean is on Tuesday or so, we have to submit this through the physical, technical, whatever process for ACM. So that means that, just to say the obvious things, these papers must have this added. And we have two choices for how to add that. One of them is we can do it manually in Author or Word or whatever, and then use Adobe Acrobat and make a new page and paste it in there. Or we can take the data, which is now in an Author document, and use Author to re-export it. So it goes computational, where, of course, one of the big things we need then is some kind of a field for all this extra stuff, all this author stuff in Author. What do you think we should do to have good papers to hand in on Tuesday, Jacob? Completely manually, semi-automatic, or automatic, or what?
Oh man. I mean, I won't have time to build a new export system by Tuesday.
When could you do it, if at all? Because I could always talk to them. It's just, you know, we wanted to give them the impression that this was easy, and it is easy in principle. But there are some issues, excuse me, there are some other issues we need to address as well. This, I'm sure, I could just do this manually. That's not the hardest thing in the world. And if you design a new version of the heading style, but then also, as I said in the email, when we look at this, these documents, there are so many things here to consider. They have, you know, we have the headings, but what are we going to do with tables and graphs that have actual readable data? Are we going to try to encode that in Visual Meta so it can be extracted with the X and the Y axis is? For instance, in this figure here, you know, there are some things. And also with the references, are we just going to copy it straight across? Or are we going to run them through Author so that they are clickable in the document and so on?
I don't have a good answer about things like charts at this time.
I think charts is a bit beyond our reach now, for sure. But, you know, architecturally, at one day, I want to be able to say in Visual Meta, figure 3, x-axis, January, blah, 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 y-axis, blah, 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 and the values. So it can be taken. I think that's in the future. We all agree on that, right? Yeah. Yes, Mark?
Well, sorry, is Peter still got his hand up, or am I? Because I'm in a queue.
I think that's an earlier hand.
All right, sorry. Okay, sorry, Peter. Right. My thought on this is sort of, again, pragmatism and teardown. So it will be lovely in the due course if we can embed this. And I know, you know, so Chris Guttridge would love to have embedded data objects and things, but realistically, everything I've seen thus far is basically just trying to describe the document as to what it is and the heading. So all these other lovely things like tables and figures are super, but actually, frankly, and also mindful that most of these things are going to have to be read also by machines. So one of the main things we need is what it is, and actually something we haven't discussed, but to put it in context, is the clean, unstyled, machine-readable text of the document. Now, you might end up, as we learn how to do this, putting then hints that point back to information that is hidden from a machine. in graphs and tables, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. The main thing, I think, at this point, and going back to the original conversation I remember about visual meta, is that what we're doing is we're creating clean citational data. So that headings is icing on the cake. It's good. So going more than that at this point, before we know where all the hidden poo traps are in it, I think is a dangerous thing to do.
Yeah, good. So we agree. Cool. Sorry for being a bit rushy here. We don't have that much time.
No, Peter's hand up.
Yeah, Peter.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we have a method for generating a globally unique ID to attach to the visual meta in a given document so that we could refer to that externally just by that global ID.
I think that's dangerous and political when we're dealing with somebody like the ACM who have their own thing. I mean, I guess we could do something like that. Okay, Peter, obviously it's a great question. So let me put it to you this way, Jacob, to direct the question at you. You know that I desperately want to be able to click on a link, click on a citation in the document. And if I happen to have it on my hard drive, it'll open the document rather than some web page. Would such a unique ID help with that? It probably would, right?
Yeah, I think we've talked about it before.
Yeah.
Having something like that that we could find, at least on Apple platforms, that we could find using Spotlight or what have you, would be really helpful.
Is there something in Jury's world? Is there some? I'm just pointing to the man who has his hand up. Is there something other than a Google link that is going to be wider, that won't cause a political problem?
But let's just design it now. It's not that hard, because Peter's right. So, okay. So the first thing we do for this idea, and it can be quite long, we do the dates, right? And we do it in this format. We can always remove those lines, and then we do the hours. So let's say 1800 hours. And then we do seconds, 23 seconds, and then we do milliseconds or something. You're the wise people. Tell me what to do.
There's a man waving. Jerry. There's a man waving.
No, I think even the second, even the minutes is I think is not significant. Certainly knowledge work, the day is the smallest amount of
to make sure it doesn't contrast with someone else's document. Maybe we also have the first few letters of the document title. How about that?
I think I would tend to put the date, which is unambiguous, first. And the reason I say that is, whether it's the date and all the time, is that if you're parsing it, if your parser craps out at the point in the title, at least you've got the date. Humans have a habit of sticking bad things in bad places. Fingers.
Oh yeah, no, that makes sense.
So I think I put the safe bit. In other words, if you're playing by the rules, even if you unintentionally stick bad stuff in, I put the bad stuff at the end of the parsable bit.
So, Jacob, how should this be? And should we have a few random characters as well?
Well, for starters, we should definitely have some kind of either dashes or dots between the components of the date.
Okay, I'm going to paste this in your text message stream. And so you make it look the way you want. I will be very happy to use your preference.
Very good, because I think what's going to happen is bits of visual meta are going to start floating around outside of their original source documents once people start making use of the system.
Yeah, you're very annoying, Peter, but in the most useful way.
But I mean, wasn't that what we discussed way back with Paul and Chris and yourself? Is what we're trying to do is we're trying to bog flush the citation system and actually get clean water running through the sewer once again. So yeah, all these things will happen and they're predictable, and it's annoying and messy, but you know, at the end of it, hopefully humanity will move forward.
Can I? Oh,
Well, I was just gonna say, I don't really know what the significance of putting a timestamp for this would be, other than making another point of failure for parsing.
It shouldn't be, I think it's something that is secondarily useful that it's time, because to be honest, if this is successful, then people may just share VM IDs. That'll be all they need for the citation, because it'll revert back to this document where all the other goodies are, right?
Yep.
That's kind of a dream, quote unquote. So if that has a little bit of actual information in it, so, such as what I think Mark said, at least it shows what year it was, then if you do a huge visualization, then you have 1 million VM IDs that are 2021, blah, blah, blah. At least you can put little dots for them.
So I mean, I get the point about, I suppose it's the degree to which people understand, and I thinking about sort of Jacob's point is that, okay, so I get a VM ID as a parser, what am I supposed to do? Well, you could do it, you could say, well, I won't put anything in there. I'm expecting this many digits, and I've heard at the beginning, if I don't get this many digits, I bail out because it's malformed. Because within that, then you actually know what the structure is. You've got 4 years, 2 months, 2 days, 2 hours, 2 minutes, 2 seconds. And then the bit on the end, it doesn't really matter what it is, as long as it's not something else that is inherently unique, or is the assumption. And I know assumptions are fragile in a coding world, and I'm not a coder, but I think that's the gist of what we're pushing forward. So you know, I'll let Jacob tell me how naive I'm being.
Well, I just sit back for a
Thank you.
proposal.
Maybe a CRC 32 of the title and author names.
What?
A hash.
Oh,
For the extra bit.
The thing is, Peter, you know, if we're doing this for our future selves, you know, who've just dug this up from the bottom of some thing and are trying to understand how humans used to do computers, will that extra encryption help or not? I don't know, and I'm not pushing back. I understand your intention in that. I'm just wondering whether it, you know, actually
We shouldn't go too far here, because first of all, let's admit that this is an incredible arrogant thing for us to do, right? Let's remember, you know, let's pretend this is going to be a huge thing and we're very lucky. You know, when Tim Berners-Lee was talking about URLs, he was talking about URIs, and people say, how can you be so arrogant to have universal indicators? You know, there have to be references and all that stuff. So a lot of people would like to own this. You know, here we're doing it in a distributed way that anybody can make it, but it is to hope that it'll succeed. It's just ridiculous. But I do think that considering the future of tech's been going for so many years with so little external stuff, we have to try. So Peter, I'm very happy to put it in this way. I'm very grateful that you pushed for it. We talked about it many times, but this is a real time. So that's in. And now we have a second issue to talk about, and we've got 10 minutes left. I'm sure we'll go over, but yes, Mark.
Jerry's put his hand up again because I think it was still up.
yeah. Well, the one thing is that I think the date is enough, because basically it is very important when it's being created, the day. But if you put in hours, then you must put in time zones. So you just
Oh, Jerry, you misunderstand. I'm glad you pointed that out. Thank you. It's not about when it was published necessarily, in the sense of the real publication. It actually really doesn't matter. It's just to help it be distinguishable from another document. The actual.
So we just say it's a UTC time, which is, you know, whether you like it or not. But I think since 1954, arguably the world has been a one consistent time, that we live in different time zones. So that timestamp, therefore, is inherently a UTC, and to have
that's
meaning.
fine. That's fine.
I think that's what, if I'm right, is unpacked from Jury's comment.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, the other thing which is which I put my hands up for, I better get rid of it eventually, is that I don't know whether I only learned about it recently when I was at the iAnnotate conference. Are you familiar with Readwise?
Jerry, I don't want to go into this now. Okay, tell us quickly, but we really are under.
No, I just two things that in terms of IDs, I think this is the whole point of the content addressable web, that you can assign a hash ID to any content, and this is what, for example, Hypothesis uses. Whenever it sees a PDF, it generates a unique hash. That really means that even if it's on your drive, or doesn't matter where on the internet it is, it can identify that somebody annotated this at somewhere else and can actually bring together all the annotations. So I think this idea, this is what Hypothesis uses for PDFs, for IDs, is their content hash. And I think that's uncontroversial. You know, then you're not trying to impose anything. You actually have something which is inherent.
Hashing is difficult because this will be produced at the time of the document, so you can't hash it because you can't insert the hash into what was hashed. That's what's a bit of a headache.
Yes. But that's why I brought in the in any case, if you would consider. And that definitely needs. I think it is a good thing.
We need. I think this is close enough, right, guys? Okay. This will, if this is implemented, if it's accepted by ACM, if we use it, this will be pretty darn near a unique string for this document, right? The chance that someone at that explicit millisecond will name the document exactly the same as someone else is reasonably small.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. So then we have the second huge issue. Ta-da. So we are going to have to encode the references in the visual meta. No, we don't have to, but it would be really, really good because a lot of stuff can then be automatic. And my first question is to Jacob and then to Mark. If I just put this in just like that, I have Mark's answer already. Or okay, let me put it this way. Jacob, can you show me how you want that? And Mark, can you help me this weekend to convert all of them into that? As long as you, Mark, who's dealing with a lot of data, and you, Jacob, who's dealing with the parsing, agree on the formatting, then Mark and I this weekend can write it up properly. Is that reasonable request for both of you?
Sure. Well, I can tell you right now.
Okay.
It can't be indented, as we found.
Why don't I share this? Okay, you have these documents too, right, in your email?
Oh, so you mean how to have them in author then, not in the PDF itself.
I mean how to have them in Visual Meta, but in order for you to tell us what to do, I have made 3 author documents. You can just go to any of the references there and format them there or indicate there. That's all I mean.
Okay. And this is for straight up parsing a citation from it. Or just to put the citation in Visual Meta?
I can't answer that because I didn't understand it.
I think I understand. We're doing a double flush.
Before you answer, Mark, just to put the constraints on this, which is really, really important. What has to happen is that we cannot make ACM unhappy by changing something of the content of this stuff. That's kind of, we're not going to change this page. That's not what I mean. Obviously, we're not going to do that. But you and me, Jacob, have not properly done visual meta in every detail. Mark finds things we're missing here and there every once in a while. So that's something you and I have to look at. But in the visual meta, all of this has to be in there, right? Because things like in blah, blah, blah and stuff. Anyway, I'm waffling on. I'm just being a bit
Well,
stupid.
can I just very quickly jump in ahead, Jacob, so you can please tether. My gurney on the screen there was just the assumption that even ACM papers actually have clean ACM references, but I'm perhaps shooting for the stars there. If we assume, and I think it's fair to say to the ACM, because it's their playground, they get to set the rules. You know, garbage in, garbage out. If we say that what's coming in is correct, so it's up to them to bounce a paper if it's not in format. The sad point in this is that when it's difficult because it's a problem we can't solve is, well, they shouldn't be doing this anyway, because what you're doing is you're taking structured data, turning it into a styled string, and then what we're having to do at this point is to return that styled string back into the structured data in BibTeX. So that's the challenge, but we have to bite on the bullet. I think the one proviso we're entitled to make, because otherwise Jacob has a totally unreasonable task, is that if the ACM accepts garbage input, the visual meta process can't be responsible for it. So it's up to them to bounce papers if they just don't meet the format. And I think that's fair. I mean, it's not that bloody hard to do there. And I know you don't like reference managers, but there are ways of getting it correct. It's just nobody bothers to do it. Jacob, I hope that's helped.
Well, I was just going to say, the best way to format it would probably be just as BibTeX. We can put there are all the standard, let me find, where,
well, then the question becomes, and this is an important question, even though it may sound silly. Let's imagine this takes off in a couple of years. Somebody's reading an ACM document that has visual meta at the end of it. They copy from that document and paste into author or equivalent that reads visual meta. And okay, yeah, I'll look at that in a second. But then the question is, in our encoding of the original document, excuse me, we have this stuff for each single author. When someone copies from the document that has this level of detail into author and paste it, are we going to collapse this into a normal visual meta, or are we going to keep it that detailed in our visual meta, excuse me, in our citation dialog in what did I do?
Well, surely you can do it for your own paper because you know what it is. It's unreasonable to do it for another paper because you don't know that, you just don't know the quality of the input.
No, we do. This is talking about when someone has gone to a document that has visual meta, where the author's names are encoded like this, and they paste it in author. All these little blue tic tacs, ideally, I guess, should have all that information in them, each single one, right?
Yep.
Behind the scenes, the names are already, wait. The names are stored in memory as first name, middle name, last name, suffix, prefix, like that. They're stored in the document as a full name.
So we then get the next level of problem, and that is when we then export the visual meta references. When we have all that information from the names, how are we going to encode? Let's pretend this is visual meta now, okay? Are we going to encode all of this for each single person in each single citation? Or are we going to only refer to this? Or the ID, that is, or should we do a normal collapsed BibTeX? If we can be sure that VM IDs are useful, we can use them. Yes, I think, Mark?
Well, Peter's got his hand up, so.
Oh,
I don't know
okay,
if-
Peter, you go, sorry.
Okay, thinking ahead to my future self and to the fact that people are going to make mistakes, I'd like to make a little suggestion for an extension to Visual Meta, and that would be an at errata comment. And the idea of an at errata block is that it would contain the VM ID of some previously published Visual Meta that I'm responsible for, and then the correction inside of it. So like I stuck in the chat, so imagine at errata, VM ID, whatever it is for the document, and then at author one, last name with a fix on the spelling. Just looking ahead to the future, because there are going to be mistakes, they're going to slip into the system. And by using the Visual Meta as a hook to attach an errata to something that might already be in the system could then pick up on that and go back in and splice things automatically for users.
Peter, that's
I like
an
that.
interesting idea, but where would that errata be? In a new document or in a database or where?
The errata could be the very last thing appearing in Visual Meta if it wants to correct some previously existing Visual Meta. And it
Okay,
would
so
have the VM ID of the Visual Meta that had the mistake in it, and then just the fraction, basically the diff on the Visual Meta as published versus what the author slipped up on and wants to fix.
Because any VMID, anything holding a basically database of VMIDs that's consuming VMIDs would effectively update all the pointers. So it would now say, okay, this VMID is now toast and point. So if anyone asks for that, so future self asking for old stuff would say, right, the current, well, it might know about it, but it's saying if you want the current reference for that document, it's now this. So that
Right. So
that's
for
really
our
nice.
three sample, right. So for our three sample documents, I'd suggest including an empty at errata tag as the very last item in the Visual Meta with a note that the purpose of this field is to have the Visual Meta ID of previously published Visual Meta that had a mistake and the diff of any fields that have changed from the published version and the updated content. And show that in all three of them as the very last item with nothing in it, because we're not making any corrections to anything that's already out there.
There's a nice humility in that. We don't know we screwed up, but we know we have. And our future selves will tell us.
I think we'll have to put that on the back burner. We can maybe revisit that on Monday. But we need to figure out when we do a citation, what goes in.
Well, Fred, that was my point. What
Yeah.
I've stuck my hand up for is that so you don't overload your process. I think it's fair to assume that if we read something that has a VMID, then the thing reading that, or even the person, goes to a place so they can look up a VMID and they bring the data in there. Because otherwise the problem just gets massive, because you keep implementing, you're pulling more and more data that, as Peter has very rightly pointed out, may have errata. So really what you want to do is saying, now I am this is me. I'm also referencing these things, which at the time that I put them in, this is the ID. And then errata will take care of the fact that actually in the 10 years since someone, I wrote the paper and someone went to look for it, that 3 of the references have proved to be wrong. That I think is a quite nice model. And also it doesn't mean that each document has got to produce an overly large amount of metadata payload.
Okay, I'm thinking a lot about that, and I have to things going back and forth. So
Sure.
we have 2 intros to Visual Meta. One is a generator, if it is made by this program. Another one is appended by. So if you open PDF in Reader and it finds a DOI and it makes up a Visual Meta, this doesn't say generator, it says appended by Reader. So this is relevant because if a document that exists is open in Reader and it appends this, can we have a way where it also gives it a VM ID that is called an appended VM ID, so that suddenly all documents have that. It could be
Brilliant.
based on the document name. It could be based on the first accessible text in the document. You guys who understand this much better than me, what would be a relatively safe way that you take 100,000 documents you already have, assign them BMIDs based on what you can find out about the documents for something like this?
Some sort of hash off the core metadata. So what you'd want is 2 copies of Reader that are both appending the VMID to an existing document to pick the same VMID when they're appending it.
Does that make sense to you, Jacob?
Yeah.
So it couldn't be based on the time and date unless it was based on the time and date of the original official publication date of the document.
Well, I mean, let's say we only have a document like this one. Oh yeah, this is mine, great. That's all we have. We don't know anything external about it at all. Jerry, you were talking about hashing earlier, and Peter, you brought up hashing again. Is that something we should do? Because we
Does
can't
it need
hash
to be? Does it need to be a hash, or can the same format as above? If we just want to make sure that it's the same version.
No, but if it's a document that was created outside of this system, let's say
We're not going to know the hour and seconds and not even necessarily the exact date beyond like the month of the conference.
or even the date at all, as the
Right.
case with many documents. Yeah, Jerry?
Yeah, I just realized that, of course, before Visual Meta puts anything into the PDF, the pristine one, that could have a hash. That would be unique. And then the variation, just the timestamping of you created it would be unique. And then it would get you out of the as far as I'm concerned, danger that you legislated some ID. Because it just, wow, it's a hash. And you could even actually make it as a requirement, which is what the Internet Archive does now, is to say, well, you know, put it on IPFS, which is the permanent memory for humanity. That gives you a hash, even if nobody hosts it in the future.
So when you're talking about put it on IPFS, do you mean put it on and see if it's already there? And if it's not there, then you add it?
Well, the whole point of IPFS is that you can put it out there as many times as you like. If it is the same and it's already out there, then you're deduplicating, you're not putting anything else. The whole point of IPFS is that when you put it out, it gives you this ID, and at that point, the system knows that this can be taken from here, or wherever it actually puts it, because it doesn't mean that it's on your machine, it goes out in the network. So it's actually an amazing idea that it basically gives you, this is so powerful.
So Jerry, what is the sorry for cutting you off. Just to get to the specifics, since you know this so well, can you tell Jacob, so we can all hear, what is the mechanism? So the software has a PDF that exists for whatever open. In order to generate this, what are the steps that technically happen?
Well, what you can do, you've got plenty of options. One of them that you can run, you can run a Fission app, Fission web native app, which means that you can it will put it on IPFS, or it's really, there are public gateways, there are Peanut, there are all kinds of services, hundreds of them. Any one of them will do it for you. It's basically one API call away, and you get back the hash, and that's it.
What does a hash look like? Is it just numbers and characters?
Well, the hash looks like, you know, sort of 64 characters.
Can you give me a hash to something?
Yeah, okay, I give you a hash to something.
Okay. What do you think of this approach, Jacob?
What will we send to these APIs? Just some of this information, or the entire document?
Yeah, I'm afraid ACM might see that as a political non-starter if they'd have to be sharing their original document, and they'd be afraid that it might get out into the wild. Is there any kind of digital rights management in IPFS so that they could assert that, you can only read this original document in our digital library, but we want IPFS to provide us with an IPFS ID corresponding to that, so
Okay.
that,
Yeah,
All
you know
right.
what I mean?
Yeah, so what I'm
It's
gonna
very
do,
political. We got to be careful there.
thank you. So what we're gonna do is not do this now, but I think it's a fantastic thing. Once this pilot is done, when to open this up to other conferences, this is absolutely one of the key things we have to talk to them about. They need to publish it in that way. So
yes,
yeah,
yeah.
the point stands. But for now, Jacob, you could just take the whole document, and how would you make a hash? Because there has to be a way that someone else can make a hash and it will be the same results.
Right, because they need the hash without the document being added to the global file repository for anyone to pull down, or they just absolutely freak out and kill our whole project. So I was wondering, does IPFS let people generate hashes?
Yes, it does. Yes, it
Okay,
does.
good.
You
Okay,
can just
but that's
generate an
important.
IPFS.
No, but let's leave IPFS, all that good stuff, for the next stage of the discussion. So, Jacob, just to be clear, even though I'm pretty sure you understand it anyway, Mark Anderson and me, we have the same PDF downloaded from somewhere. Open it in Reader. Reader says this doesn't have any visual meta. There's a DOI. Shall I make it? Blah blah blah. Yes, it does. And then a hashing process is done, so that if Mark and I share documents, the system will know these documents are actually identical.
Right.
Well,
Sorry,
there
sorry,
are.
Sorry, I just realized that you can just use hypothesis as a service, because basically if you call the API and say I want to annotate this PDF, as long as at that moment it's available, it's web accessible, it will
No,
give you
it's not going to be web accessible. We have
yeah,
to.
okay,
That's our whole problem.
Yeah, for the
Anything
first
has to be
step.
done offline.
Just
for
yeah,
ACM
okay,
control.
then just want to you got to pick whatever hash
So,
generation would do. Yeah.
So, Jacob, what do you suggest then?
There are ways I can hash it locally.
There is or isn't? I didn't hear you.
There are
Okay.
the whole file. I just
Okay,
didn't
whatever
know
it is for you then, Jacob, I think is the way to go.
So,
Well, yeah, like I didn't know if we were looking at a situation where we were going to have to send something to an API, because like we've gotten a test
not gonna
document
send.
from.
not
I
sending
know,
anything.
that's why I was
Yeah.
concerned, because
Yeah.
we've gotten a test document from a user before that. Let me see here. It was 88 megabytes of Michelangelo paintings in the PDF.
Oh gosh,
and
yeah, that one.
If we open that puppy up and try and shuttle it off to an API, there's gonna be pain. So
No, you could run any of these tools locally. You don't need to.
Yeah.
But
make
so,
it
Jacob,
web
what we need to have here in the description of Visual Meta, so anyone else can do it. Can you describe? Don't have to do it right now, but describe how this hashing works, so that anybody, or just can we provide the code for that so anybody can use the same hashing?
there are command line tools to do it.
I didn't hear that. Could you say that again? The door was tinkling.
There are command line tools to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, can you, in an email or text or whatever, just write using such and such command line tools with such and such variables or whatever it might be, so that
Yeah.
anyone else can do the same thing? Mr. Anderson.
We're going to just a quick one, just to check we're on the same page, is that we're potentially hashing or referencing two different things. One is effectively the original text of the document.
Yeah.
As opposed to a document that has been annotated, either the actual text of the document has been changed, which is separate from whether it's the original version of the document and I've added a boatload of extra goodies inside. I'm not, sorry, I know it sounds like I'm trying to overcomplicate, and I don't mean that. I think the core thing at this early stage is just to say that regardless of all the annotations and the extra stuff on it, that the basal layer, the sort of the text, bar all the annotations, that's in my document is the one that's in your document, even if your document has 14 highlights and mine has 2. if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So this is before
The-
actual annotation.
Sure,
But
yeah, absolutely.
but
But
really-
sorry, I just wanted to surface that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
assumption.
But going back to the whole references thing, this is kind of important. So tell me if you all agree. We are copying from a document that has full visual meta with all the bells and whistles. We're going to paste the citation. In this series of boxes below here, we're going to have either the VMID or the VMID appended, right? So that when it comes to the authors, they can be, they should have all of this stuff internally.
Hmm.
But when this, so that's stored in each one of these blue boxes. But when this document is then exported again, the reference section will be collapsed so that it will look like this, right? With names like this, with the and all of that. Because also here, there will be the VM ID, right? So people can then look it up. The
Yeah,
original
because
document.
that gets you out of this thing where you just, everyone is passing around. I mean, if you, I think otherwise we go down the path of madness, because there's nothing wrong with the format, but
Yeah.
you're suddenly passing around vast amounts of
But that's-
metadata. I
yeah,
think
no,
it's
right,
I
but
think
we
it's perfectly
agree on
reasonable
that,
to
right?
yeah, it's perfectly reasonable to assume for the long, well, no, it's part of the pitch that the assumption is, whether it's a VMID or something else, that that we're building a presumption that there is a place you can go to dereferences. Because if everything has to do that, or they may say, we'll do it to start with because we want to flush the system. So if a document, so for instance, if reference 10 has, we know it's got visual meta, we'll provide it. But if 11 doesn't,
Yeah.
because basically what we are trying to do is we're trying to flush crap reference data out of the system. Now, once arguably everything is known, happy day, then we can probably push back to a central database or repository that tells us
Yeah,
that.
yes.
And we can offer that up to the ACM. Being computer scientists, hopefully, will think that's a good thing.
But yes, but the thing is, now what we have to deliver, I mean, I don't know if you can see what boring stuff I'm doing. It's just already, just by copying and pasting from their formatting, it's already a bit of a mess, right? So
Yeah.
so what we need to do, and this is what we need to do basically now. That one is not very useful. We need to encode this in visual meta as well as we can.
Right, and I want to, that brings up one reason why it would be good to have it in visual meta is the parsing on Apple platforms, which brings a little addendum to the hashing. We can't guarantee that the raw text that we get is going to be the same as if another tool is doing this, as we know.
You're saying that if, because of the way that,
like the example on your screen right there, that will come in as, just the references section will come in as at least 2 columns. It will come in as a string, as a run of text.
okay, I remember you
Brackets
showed me, that's
one,
an important point.
Open bracket 1, close bracket, open bracket 2, close bracket. It'll have all that, and then it will have the text to the left because it will have pulled that in as 2 columns.
So therefore, no, you're absolutely right. And this is something that Mark goes on often. I'm very familiar with this issue. So therefore, I'm suggesting if it's appended, it says what software did the appending, at least, right? Because this is not very good. Because we are going into a world we have that. So this will say, reader did that appending at so-and-so version. You may or may not be able to use it. Fair enough?
Yeah, having the version number will be important because Reader 4.0 could switch to PSPDFKit, which doesn't do the stupid automatic column detection.
Yeah. So have we solved that problem by adding this for that? For the hash? Good, everybody agrees.
Well, so VMID underscore appended underscore reader, are we gonna make, does that then mean that, say Acrobat Reader adds support for this?
Mhm.
Does that then become VM underscore ID underscore appended underscore Acrobat Reader?
No, it
Whatever
becomes,
version?
okay. We can call this, let's just give it a,
I'm
because
thinking,
that's-
but my point is that we should have stable keys into this. So the actual data should be somehow over in the value of the reader 3.0.
Okay, okay, that sounds good, but I don't know what you mean.
It should be more like, let me type it out.
If you want to edit.
It should be more like something like this, just as an example. So that there's a stable VM underscore ID underscore appended key that can be counted on to possibly be there.
I need to know if Peter's going to give us a thumbs up on this. Okay, good.
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Not that I know, because I'm not a coder. Just because Jacob doesn't know me.
I have to send a message about dinner. I'm so sorry. Okay.
While Fred's doing that, I just want to say to Jacob, to the man behind the curtain, I'm very impressed with what you've done with, you know, coding in Acrobat and Reader, and thanks for that.
Well, the reader has been, it's a very simple app, but man, the parsing stuff has just been a nightmare with the PDF implementation we're working with.
Yeah. Mark knows this from what he's been doing with scans and things recently. So I think you guys are soulmates on this pain. So I have to then ask you, what do we do with this, Jacob? Is this something that I can give to you? Just these, you do these documents and you just put it in a few of them manually and we try to follow your example, or?
I think it needs to go, there needs to be a references section. It needs to, something like that. We need to define how we're going to do collections in a section. If it's similar to how I described it.
I don't, can you
maybe
explain what a collection is? I think I got the wrong end of the stick, so to speak, on that.
in an array in programming terms.
A list of things.
Yes, a list.
That are all things, but maybe slightly different things. So a book is not an article, but it's a thing.
So you're talking about how to basically write headlines, so to speak, for what's coming next now is all about so and so. Is that what you mean?
To say that at references, when you go to parse it, it's not a single object, which BibTeX is a single object with keys and values, and that to say that what I did were like the bracket, the less than whatever type colon collection in my message before, if you want to go back to it.
Okay, but so how do you want it to look then? Because, you know, I'm literally your secretary writing what you want at this point.
It's in my messages from before. You showed it earlier.
Okay, let me go back up. You may have noticed I write more messages to you, like, okay.
Yeah, that kind of stuff.
So I don't actually know how to deal with this. So name equals contents level. So this is for what? Headings, right?
Yes, but the same type of deal would be used for bib text or for references, and we could potentially, no, it wouldn't be like that. There would still
do
be,
it then.
Okay.
And you'd also have the closing angle bracket.
Yeah. Yeah. So it might be,
Sorry, curly bracket.
I'm typing this in text edit, not, but I hate using messages to type stuff.
Oh, Raphael left. I didn't see that. Oh, Jerry left. I didn't see that.
That's right. I sent Raphael a thank you for the demo, which is interesting. I saw you find him something in the email.
It's very interesting, and I look forward to Adam and Raphael going through that probably next Friday, I guess.
Yeah, and then I was late to Peter's demo. I also found that rather interesting.
Yeah, I think
I'll have more functionality on Monday.
I don't doubt it. And if you need, let me know if there's a gap in the data set. I can probably fill in some of the things. I'm working on a canonical ID for authors in a way that's still flexible within Tinderbox. But at some point, this is going to push out of what Tinderbox can hold. But its main job is to support incremental formalization. I think at this point, while we try and figure out what it is we need and what we don't have.
Something like that. I think I have all the proper open and close brackets.
okay. Let me copy
Yeah,
this.
Yeah, something like that. I'm just using 4 dashes in this example as what we are looking for when parsing for a break in each object.
So local UID key, how is that generated?
I just copied what you had on the. That's just what you have on the.
So in BibTeX, that's
On here, I just.
often a name, date, or it might be a DOI. So it's basically it literally is whatever unique ID.
Yeah, but for me, I'm going to have to start with this
89 or something
content.
like that.
But I'm going to have to start. This is all the data we have to start with, guys.
Right.
So we don't have that ID, right?
No, we don't.
No, that I could have just deleted that. That's what you had on the website. So
Okay. So
I just copy and
basically-
pasted the entries.
So do it.
That
if we
can
don't
be.
have it, is it okay to leave these out?
Yes.
I
that
would
can be-
I would iterate them locally because for the sake of the fact that a BibTeX based parser will expect a key and will moan if it doesn't have one. If it
So what
doesn't
do I
know
do?
what to do with the key, that's for the programmer who's deal with it, I think is probably easier. So exactly. And if they don't know what your local ID, they don't know what key.
Oh, but hang on, we do have a key. Of course we do. Yeah, here it is.
Well, yes, that's what I mean. So, it's number 5. So we can put that in. The point is it has no real meaning because, we talked about this in terms of reference managers, but the point is what this does is it stops someone who's implementing something that knows how to parse BibTeX from
It has
barfing
real
when
meaning.
it gets to there and doesn't have a key.
Jacob, you can use this number to represent, excuse me, where am I? I'm going a bit nuts, to represent this, right? When you're searching for it in the text.
Potentially, yes.
Right. So
And if you're using a name year format, it could just stick that in because that's another style.
okay.
But the point I make for it is you don't have to basically, as long as you stick something in there.
No, but no.
You won't be.
Good.
No. I'm not
1,
being
2, 3, 4, 5 is good.
The point is, as long as you stick something in there that's based on the document you've made,
Yeah.
you are not
Okay.
adding to the next person's problem.
I think that's great. Okay, I am happy for today. And I will try to do something with some of these documents over the weekend. So those of us who can meet on Monday can go through it. Jacob, what do you think, considering the time you may or may not have, what do you think you can do that'll be most useful? Would it be maybe to do something in Reader to do the parsing of a manually created one, or to help us? Actually, Jacob, what I would love, if possible, is if in Reader, you know, when you paste in a DOI, it gives you that little box, is this correct?
Yeah.
If that box could be editable, then we can keep pasting into it, and then it'll show up here. If it's wrong, we just delete it and start again. Because then also we can then copy from a document, we've done it, go into author, paste it, and make sure it goes in the right fields.
Does that show the actual visual meta string, or does it show? I thought it showed just plain big text. I don't remember now. I haven't done it in so long.
Oh, I just want to note that when you write the description of the visual meta, you should make a point that that local key can be overridden when documents get merged together on different bibliographies for drawing a new paper. So somebody won't think that that one has to be a frozen one, and then if they get another document they're looking at that has a different reference that has a one, that they'd wind up getting all confused and not understanding that it's okay to change the one. It's explicitly note in the documentation that the local key can be freely overridden by any application running it if it's merging references.
Right.
Yeah, there are no guarantees on what will come after that. Oh, it is a visual meta.
Yeah. Can you make this field editable?
I'll see. It's not. It's more complicated than just making it editable, because
Yeah, presumably because you got to feed. If you want to store it again, you don't want to be stealing whatever.
yeah, because I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not parsing that out. I'm dumping what I come up with. That's basically the string that I've decided is going to go into the document. It doesn't actually map back to the individual values. So that's where I've run into roadblocks before.
Yeah, because I think what Freud's asking is, I understand that, but to be editable, you'd
this,
almost need to put all those little bits into a box, because it's not that you want to present. Well, something may say I'm an article and I should be a book. I mean, it's a bit of a rabbit hole, but I can absolutely see that what you don't want is unintentionally to let even a well-intentioned author just create garbage that you then pump back into the VM.
Yeah, and like you said, it would have to be. I would have to build an editor UI to be able to actually get the values back into the data.
Okay, all right, fine. There are big issues here. How about, as a compromise in terms of robustness? Oops, that's not what I wanted to do.
But also, Freud, I mean, you can point that as something that could be done, just because it's not there today. I mean,
but how about this? Sorry, how about you make them all fields?
In Reader?
Yeah, so all of this is actually fields. So author is a title, and then Klaus Atzenbach is just a text field. So if someone writes the name format in wrong, it should be written Atzenbach, Klaus. That's really up to the user. And this may be a hidden feature that's only for us for this incredibly important test.
I'll see what I can do.
This is
it's not exactly something where I can just drop stuff in and get it to work. I've got to build out basically something that builds the UI based on what we get.
Well, remember, it would be nice to have this for end users, but that's only a would be nice. What is more important is to have a method for me as one single tester to be able to easily paste in this stuff that I've handmade somewhere else. That is also okay, rather than using Adobe Acrobat, making a new page, because that's really prone to errors, and there's a size issue, there's all kinds of stuff.
I mean, I'll see what I can do. I can't make any promises.
I can see there's some work.
But what about, because Jacob, you never overpromise because you're always cautious, which is great. But what about if we implement a new thing that is quite simply, just like you can now paste a DOI, which is what I did, we have a new option that is tools as paste visual meta that is already done completely. And all it does, doesn't do any parsing or anything, all it does is just paste it right there.
But if you put a typo in that, Fred, I mean, this is the problem. If you put, because we humans make mistakes, so you don't close out a field or something,
Very good.
that then pushes the VM in, and the whole thing, we've polluted the well once again.
Yes.
I'm sure that's what Jacob's thinking
Mark,
of.
I am an expert at making mistakes when it comes to this.
Me too.
Well, no.
That's why I like my Adorata at the very end.
Yeah, but listen, guys, we have to think about what we're actually doing here. What we're doing is 3 documents for one pilot, for them to see that it works. Just 3 documents as a test to give in early.
I mean, I can make something like that, but to be honest, the quickest thing would be if you just put that text in TextEdit and exported, saved as a PDF, and drug it right into inline in preview. It's, I mean, I took the code out of the open source code for PDF to do all the page layout, like, or out of TextEdit. Like, as long as you use the fonts you want, it's the exact same thing. And that's something that you could quickly do.
But I have to append it onto the end of the document.
If you open up a PDF in preview, as long as it's not write protected, you can just drag other pages into it, into the sidebar.
Oh yeah,
So
you
if
mean
you
move around like that?
Yep. So if you open up another PDF in preview.
Oh,
And
one from one to the other, you mean?
yeah, you can just, if you just like made a document in TextEdit, saved and exported, or saved and went like into print.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yep.
Yep. That would get you where you need to be really quick. And
But you're basically telling me that I should do the work. I'm not sure if I'm sold on this.
You were wanting to write the text and just paste it into Reader.
Yeah.
This you would just write the text and
yeah, I will do that. I'll spend the weekend doing that as much as I can, wedding anniversary and everything coming up. But the next step probably needs to be have a dialogue in Reader where we can put it in as proper units, because when we do the actual conference coming up, you know, in about a month, I think, then it will have to be really rock solid. This is just a run through.
Yeah, but bear in mind, you know, people can proof what you've done, but I do understand Jacob's point that doing a half-assed thing, you know, rushing it over the weekend to do that, and I totally see where this is going, but in the short term, doing it textually, probably getting some effective peer reviewing, you know, getting someone to have a look for just syntax mistakes will get us where we need to go in the time without rushing, because I can see that although what you're asking for is simple, it's a non-trivial amount of work to
Mark, I think we completely agree on all points.
Yeah,
I will do what Jacob suggested over the weekend, because what will come up is a few errors, who cares? But I think there will also be other issues like, oh, we've dealt with the references like this, but suddenly there's this other thing. So it's just the way that when we meet again on Monday, we can go through and not just check my work like a schoolboy, but just check our assumptions on how to do the formatting. For the
sure.
next page. Yeah. Peter, any final things for you? We have to wrap up very soon.
I think we're in good shape. I just like the idea of having the empty errata at the very end, just so people know that there's going to be the ability to link to previous visual meta ID, and that will give the ACM people the visual use case as to why they want to have the VM ID attached to the previous VM, and just point out it's a nice way for them to be able to go in and clean up the database in an automated fashion down the road when we discover that we slipped up and we put an extra N in someone's last name before it went to print, and suddenly, oh, it's too late to do anything.
Yeah, I like empty errata. Empty errata is a nice signal. Yeah,
that is something we need to discuss when this rush is over, how to put it into the visual meta standard. Absolutely agree with you.
So for now, I just have the empty one at the end to show them the little hint that something's coming. down the road. We don't have to have any errata visible or anything, just
Yeah.
that it's part of the standard format is that there's an option for errata to be attached.
Yeah,
And,
Okay,
and
guys.
Frode, I just sent you a link.
I saw that. It's
it will
amazing.
show you, it will show you errors in BibTeX formatting.
Yeah,
So that should
I'll just
should
put it
do a
in
lot
the
to,
chat here
to
as well.
give.
Yeah,
to
that's really
avoid issues.
fantastic. I will be using that for, yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you. Okay, Jacob, did you, yeah, Jacob, do you have any time later today for 20 minutes?
It will have to be. I gotta check things.
Ping me if you have time later. It's just some other things just to get it out of my head.
Okay, it might be a little later than you'd like, but
That's fine. If I'm awake, I'm awake. If not, I don't see the ping.
And we really should submit a paper on this whole process to document for the world how we came
The
to
pain.
it.
Okay.
With visual meta.
I look forward to seeing you guys as
On
many as you
Monday.
can make it on Monday. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
and
Have a
so good
good
to meet
weekend.
Jacob. Thanks very much.
Thank you for
meet you
today.
all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.